The question was, if I gave you evidence that would satisfy a certain level of probabilistic...
No.
So you wouldn't?
No, because that isn't how I evaluate the situation.
How would you evaluate it? This is the crux.
Well, I'm a Muslim enough to have been invited to your mosque.
No, you're always invited. Even if
but I mean this specifically. I mean this very specifically, you know. I don't think in some sense, it's a very complicated problem.
Okay.
You know, when people meet me on the street, they'll say things like, I met a couple of Orthodox Jews in New York, and they said to me on the street that they call me rabbi, which was it's a hell of a thing to hear, you know. And so, and then I have Muslim people who are listening to my biblical lectures, and
more than that,
they say,
by the way. Yeah.
Yes, more than that. And, you know, they say, well, Peterson doesn't know it yet, but he's really a Muslim. And that's very, that's an honor, you know? Just like it was an honor to be approached by these Orthodox Jews. And that hasn't only happened once. And I've had lots of correspondence with people. And the same thing has happened with the Orthodox Christians, and to some degree the Catholics, and lesser so the Protestants. And so I don't know exactly what to make of that. We talked about this a little bit.
Yeah.
And let's talk about proof, you know. Well, for me, the proof of faith is the attractiveness of its adherents. And that's something to think about, right? Well, are you a shining example of the Muslim faith? Well, how hard do you shine?
Even talk about Islam. That's the reason I have so much respect for Islam as a whole, because I have so much respect for it because they have a baseline morality. We're here in Dubai. You could walk outside and find a poor construction worker who just moved here, who's earning, I don't know, no money, you know, can barely afford to eat, and offer him $1 million to denounce the Prophet. He won't do it.
No.
He'll never do it. He'll never do it. Whereas in the West, if you were to go and find a Christian,
$1.
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything, right? So it's that baseline morality that they can't corrupt that they're afraid of. It's why they're afraid of Islam. It's why they're afraid of me. It's why they're afraid of people who sit and say there is more to life and existence in this and the next. Then men and women will stay families again. People will have children. And all the world's problems will be fixed.
They'll chase their goals.
Absolutely. I call for the Islamification of the entire Western world, because otherwise we have atheistic countries. And when you remove religion, now what do you have? People are now adhering to woke ideology and this new insane religion. Everybody has a religion. If you remove Christianity from the West, you don't have atheists. You now have these people adhering to this woke, new world liberal psychopathy where people are doing absolutely insane and disgusting things to each other and children. And they're sitting there saying that that's progressive somehow. And it's absolutely and utterly disgusting. So if we need a God to believe in to preserve morality and decency amongst humanity, then let's have a God that people actually fear and respect. And that's why Islam is the only religion left on the planet. There's no other religion you can possibly name that even matters.
First, we must take the idea that the satanic impulse within is the prime enemy with all due seriousness. Second, we must understand that even those quite possessed by the spirit of Cain that attracts and drives confused and lost people to the Luciferian ideologies of the materialist utopians are, in the ideal, fully redeemable and only partially consumed. Even the committed student ideologues who have, for example, attacked me and others like me rather viciously are generally, say, 90%, or perhaps 80%, reasonable and potentially civilized people who could still see the light. Muslims, reach across the sectarian divide. Shiites, find a Sunni pen pal. Communicate with someone on the other side. Sunnis, do the same. And then, maybe, reach out, tentatively, to a Christian, or even, heaven forbid, a Jew. Because perhaps it is time for those who purport to be followers of God to act like it. Are you a shining example of the Muslim faith? Well, how hard do you shine? Trying to understand the Christian doctrine of the Word and its relationship to the Jewish prophetic tradition for a long time, and I know that Christ is a central figure in Islam as well. I mean, the Christians make the claim that Christ is the Son of God, right? He's the Messiah himself, and it's very difficult, if you're going to be a Christian, not to accept that claim. You know, I think the notion that the free, truthful word is the fundamental redeeming force, I believe that's true. I think part of the stumbling block for me in relationship to Islam. I can understand Christianity in relationship to Judaism, but I can't understand Islam in relationship to Christ, because I understand the Christian idea that Christ was a transcendent consequence of the prophetic tradition, and the Christian insistence that his life is associated with the divinity of the Word, and that is in some sense a final statement. And so I don't understand how Islam moves beyond that and still places Christ in a place of centrality.
If I had to bet on one religion as if I were betting on the stock market for the future, you have to bet on Islam. Because Muslims are intolerant. And I'm not saying that disrespectfully, because if you're tolerant of everything, then you stand for nothing.
Yeah.
Christians are so tolerant now. You don't believe it. They have gay pastors that I'm not even anti-gay, but if the book says don't have, like, what do you believe in now? If you're tolerant of everything, you stand for nothing. I can walk through London with a t-shirt saying Jesus is gay and nothing will happen to me. If I did the same thing with the Islamic prophet, I'd be dead before I got to the end of the street.
Boom.
That's how much they believe and respect. And I respect people who stick up for what they believe in.
Yeah.
It's not even about me believing in it. I respect them because they believe, and they will defend. Muslims are the only people who will defend their religion. They will defend their beliefs. They refuse to be mocked. They refuse to be insulted. And I respect that about them.
He said, tell me about Islam. And he said, Islam is that you make the testimony of faith, that you pray 5 times a day, that you fast Ramadan, that you pay zakat, and that you, if you're able to, you make a pilgrimage once in your lifetime to Mecca. And the Prophet Muhammad said, faith is to believe that there's only one God, and that Muhammad, which includes all the previous messengers, is a messenger of God, to believe in angels, to believe in the books that God has revealed, to believe in the last day, the day of judgment, and to believe in the measuring out of good and evil, that good and evil is part of life. And then he said, tell me about ihsan, which is the 3rd dimension of Islam. And he said, and this is the dimension of virtuous being, like being a person of arity, of excellence in the world. And he said, ihsan is to worship God as if you see God. And if you don't see him, at least you know that he sees you. So you have an awareness of that there is a divine presence, and you should be in a state of awareness in your behavior.
I was born in a Christian country. I was raised as a Christian, and I've always been very respectful of Islam. And it's become more and more obvious to me and more pertinent that Islam is the last religion on the planet. It's just, for me, it feels like the last religion on earth. I feel like there's no other religion. People say to me, why did you convert? And I said, I don't really feel it as a conversion. It's almost like I knew God was real and now I've become religious. So, well, you were religious before. I was like, religious before how? Christian? What does Christian mean? You go to Christian nations and everyone says they're a Christian. Look how they live their lives. Go into the average church. Is anyone actually fearful of God? Anybody? No, the girls are out on Saturday night drinking and then they turn up to church because their parents made them. Like there's no substance to the religion. And also, Islam very closely reflects my personal beliefs.